The briefing room smelled of stale coffee and institutional paranoia. Marcus Reed sat across from director Sarah Chen, watching her manicured fingers trace the edge of a manila folder she hadn't yet opened. In his 12 years with the agency, he'd learned that the longer a director waited to reveal an assignment, the dirtier it was likely to be. "Tell me what you know about information brokers," Chen said finally, her eyes fixed on him with that particular intensity that meant this wasn't really a question. "They're parasites," Reed replied. "They trade in secrets. No loyalty except to the highest bidder. And if I told you one broker has been responsible for destabilizing 3 governments, compromising 4 intelligence networks, and getting at least 17 operatives killed over the past decade?" Reed leaned forward slightly. "I'd say someone should have dealt with her years ago." Chen smiled, but there was no warmth in it. She opened the folder and slid a photograph across the desk. The woman in the image was striking. Late 40s, dark hair pulled back in an elegant chignon, wearing what looked like an expensive silk blouse. She could have been a diplomat's wife or a museum curator. Her expression was composed, almost serene. "Victoria Stone," Chen said, though she's used at least a dozen other names. "British passport, but we're not convinced that's authentic. She operates out of Vienna under the cover of an art consultancy. High-end pieces, exclusive clientele, all very refined and legitimate on the surface. And underneath? Underneath, she's built the most sophisticated intelligence marketplace we've ever encountered. She doesn't just sell secrets, Reed. She collects them, cross-references them, packages them. She knows which information becomes more valuable when combined with other information. She's not just a broker, she's a curator of classified intelligence." Reed studied the photograph. Victoria Stone looked nothing like the hardened criminals or ideological fanatics he usually hunted. She looked like she belonged at a gallery opening or a symphony performance, which, he supposed, was precisely the point. "What's her background?" Chen's expression tightened almost imperceptibly. "That's part of the problem. We don't have a clear picture. She appeared on our radar about 15 years ago, already established, already connected. Every time we trace her history back, the trail goes cold. It's as if she materialized fully formed. No one materializes fully formed." "Exactly." Chen pulled out another document, this one heavily redacted. "What we do know is that she's currently sitting on intelligence that could expose ongoing operations in Eastern Europe. We have reason to believe she's preparing to sell it to the highest bidder, possibly the Russians, possibly the Chinese, maybe both. Why not just burn her network, expose her operation? Because we don't know the full extent of what she has. If we move overtly and fail to contain her, she could trigger a catastrophic data dump. Everything she's collected over the years, released simultaneously. It would be an intelligence apocalypse." Reed understood then why he was sitting in this room. This wasn't an investigation. This wasn't surveillance or infiltration. This was something much simpler and much darker. "You want her eliminated?" "I want the threat eliminated," Chen corrected, though they both knew it amounted to the same thing. "Quietly. Permanently. You'll have full operational autonomy. No oversight, no check-ins. You're our best field operative, Reed. You complete difficult assignments. You don't leave loose ends." He should have felt something. Reluctance, moral hesitation, at least a moment's pause. But he'd long ago accepted that his work existed in shades of gray, that sometimes the only way to protect innocent lives was to take guilty ones. Victoria Stone had 17 dead operatives to answer for. How many more would die if she continued operating? What's my timeline? Flexible, but not indefinite. Our sources suggest she's becoming nervous, paranoid. She may be planning to disappear. Once she goes underground, we'll never find her. Chen slid a slim dossier across the desk. Everything we have on her patterns, her known associates, her cover business. It's not much, but it's a start. Reed collected the documents, already mentally cataloging the information, planning his approach. Vienna, an art consultancy. A woman who'd survived in the intelligence underworld for 15 years by being smarter and more careful than everyone hunting her. One more thing, Chen said as he stood to leave. Don't underestimate her. Every operative who's gotten close to Victoria Stone has either died or disappeared. She's not dangerous because she fights. She's dangerous because she knows things about everyone, including us. Noted. I'm serious, Reed. She survived this long by being 10 steps ahead of everyone else. Whatever you think you know, assume she knows more. Reed nodded and left the briefing room, the folder tucked under his arm. In the hallway, he paused to look at Victoria Stone's photograph again. There was something in her eyes. Not cruelty, not malice, but a kind of cold assessment, as if she were looking at a chessboard and calculating moves 20 turns ahead. He'd tracked killers and terrorists, mercenaries and traitors, but this felt different. Victoria Stone wasn't a soldier or a fanatic. She was something more dangerous, a survivor who'd turned survival into an art form. Reed pulled out his phone and booked a flight to Vienna. He had 3 days to establish surveillance, identify her patterns, and find a vulnerability. 3 days to get close to a woman who'd made a career out of knowing when someone was getting close. As he walked toward the agency's exit, a small voice in the back of his mind whispered a question he immediately suppressed. What kind of person survives in the shadows for 15 years? What would make someone choose that life? He pushed the thought aside. Those weren't his questions to answer. He had a mission. Victoria Stone was a threat that needed to be eliminated. The reasons didn't matter. But as he stepped into the cold afternoon air, Reed couldn't quite shake the feeling that Director Chen had told him only part of the story. And in his experience, the parts left untold were always the ones that mattered most. Vienna wore its history like an expensive coat. Elegant, layered, concealing as much as it revealed. Reed had been in the city for 2 days, and he'd spent most of that time watching a narrow street in the First District, where Victoria Stone's art consultancy occupied the ground floor of a 19th century building. The gallery was called Gallery Steinweg, and it specialized in Eastern European artwork from the Cold War era. Through the tall windows, Reed could see carefully curated pieces, abstract paintings, avant-garde sculptures, photographs that captured the tension of divided nations. It was, he had to admit, a brilliant cover. The art world attracted wealth, secrecy, and international clients who valued discretion. Cash transactions, private viewings, untraceable provenance. Stone herself appeared each morning at 9:15, arriving in a chauffeured black sedan that dropped her at the gallery's entrance. She wore tailored suits in muted colors, charcoal, navy, deep burgundy, and carried a leather attaché case that never left her sight. She moved with the unhurried confidence of someone who owned every space she entered. Reed had photographed her 17 times from various angles. He'd mapped her routine, identified her driver, noted the security cameras positioned at every corner of the building. He'd even purchased a small sketch from one of her assistants, a young woman named Elena Marquez, who seemed more bodyguard than art dealer. But observation had its limits. He needed to get closer, to understand how she operated, to find the vulnerability that would let him complete his mission. Which was why, on the third morning, Reed walked through the gallery's front door. The interior smelled of lemon oil and old paper. Track lighting illuminated the artwork, creating pools of brightness in an otherwise subdued space. Classical music played softly from hidden speakers, something Russian, melancholy, and complex. Elena appeared immediately, her dark eyes assessing him with professional wariness. "Good morning. May I help you?" "I'm interested in acquiring pieces from the late Soviet period," Reed said, playing the role of wealthy collector he'd prepared. "Particularly works that capture the transition era. I was told this gallery specializes in such collections." "We do." Elena's posture relaxed slightly, though her gaze remained sharp. "Are you familiar with specific artists? Or would you prefer a curated selection?" "I'd value expert guidance. I'm new to this particular period." "Then you should speak with Miss Stone." "One moment." Elena disappeared through a door at the back of the gallery, and Reed used the opportunity to study his surroundings more carefully. The security was subtle but thorough. Cameras, reinforced doors, what looked like pressure sensors beneath certain floorboards. This wasn't just a gallery. It was a vault. "Mr. Reed turned. Victoria Stone stood in the doorway, and he felt his assessment shift immediately. The photographs hadn't captured her presence, the way she occupied space, the intelligence that radiated from her like heat. She was more beautiful in person, but it was the kind of beauty that made you cautious rather than careless. "Thorne," Reed said, using his cover identity. "James Thorne. I apologize for arriving without an appointment. The best clients rarely make appointments." Stone moved into the gallery with fluid grace, her eyes never leaving his face. "They follow their instincts." "What brings you to Vienna, Mr. Thorne?" "Business. I'm consulting for a firm relocating to Eastern Europe. But I've always believed in collecting art from regions where I work. It provides context." Context. Stone smiled, and Reed had the unsettling feeling that she'd just filed away everything about him. His posture, his word choice, the quality of his watch. An interesting philosophy. Most collectors seek beauty or investment value. You seek understanding. The three aren't mutually exclusive. No, but they reveal different priorities. She gestured toward a large canvas on the far wall, a stark image of barbed wire against snow. "This is Mikhail Sokolov, 1987. Painted 2 years before the wall fell. He was imprisoned for it." Reed studied the painting, genuinely moved despite himself. He saw what was coming. He saw what was always there. The cracks in the facade. Stone moved closer, standing beside him. "Artists and spies have that in common, don't you think? They both look beneath the surface." The comment landed with deliberate weight, and Reed felt his pulse quicken. Was she testing him? Playing with him? Or simply making conversation? "I wouldn't know much about spies," he said carefully. "Of course not." Her tone was light, almost amused. "None of us do. They're ghosts, really. Present, but invisible. Watching, gathering information, making judgments about who deserves to survive and who doesn't." Reed kept his expression neutral, but his mind raced. She knew, or suspected, or was paranoid enough to test every new client who walked through her door. "The painting?" he said, redirecting. Is it for sale? Everything is for sale, Mr. Thorne, at the right price. Stone turned to face him directly, and he saw something flicker in her eyes, calculation mixed with what might have been curiosity. But I sense you're not really here for the art, are you? The moment stretched between them, taut as a wire. Reed could feel Elena's presence behind him, blocking the exit. He could abort, walk out, regroup, or he could push forward into whatever game Stone was playing. I'm here, Reed said quietly, because your gallery was recommended by someone who values discretion as much as quality. Discretion? Yes. Stone's smile sharpened. I do pride myself on understanding my clients' needs, even the needs they don't speak aloud. Tell me, Mr. Thorne, are you looking for something specific? Something that might not be displayed in the main gallery? It was an opening, carefully constructed, deliberate as a chess move. She was offering him access to her real business, testing whether he was a buyer or something else entirely. I'm looking, Reed said, for someone who understands the value of information. Who knows that knowledge, properly curated, becomes power. Stone's expression didn't change, but something shifted in the air between them. Recognition, perhaps, or mutual acknowledgement of the game they were playing. Knowledge is only power, she said softly, if you know when to use it. Timing, Mr. Thorne, that's the real art. She paused, studying him with those unnervingly perceptive eyes. You should come back tomorrow evening, after hours. I'll show you pieces from my private collection, items that require special handling. I'll be here. I'm sure you will. Stone extended her hand, and Reed shook it, feeling the strength in her grip. Until tomorrow, then, Reed left the gallery with his heart hammering against his ribs. He'd gotten closer than he'd planned, faster than he'd expected. Stone had not only allowed it, she'd invited it. As he walked through Vienna's elegant streets, Reed couldn't shake the feeling that he'd just been outmaneuvered. He'd come to hunt Victoria Stone, but she'd somehow reversed the dynamic. Now he was walking into her territory, at her invitation, on her terms. Director Chen's warning echoed in his mind. She's survived this long by being 10 steps ahead of everyone else. Reed pulled out his phone, thumb hovering over Chen's contact. He should report this development, request guidance, maybe even backup. Instead, he pocketed the phone and kept walking. Tomorrow evening, a private collection, special handling. Whatever Victoria Stone was planning, Reed would be ready. Or so he told himself. The gallery after hours felt like a different world. Reed arrived at 8:30 to find the front windows dark, the street lamps casting long shadows across the cobblestones. He pressed the intercom button beside the door, and Elena's voice crackled through the speaker. Mr. Thorne, come up to the 3rd floor. The lock buzzed. Reed entered, finding himself in a narrow hallway lit by a single overhead bulb. A staircase curved upward into darkness. He climbed, his footsteps echoing against bare walls, keenly aware that he was walking into a controlled environment where Victoria Stone held every advantage. The 3rd floor opened into a converted loft. Exposed brick, high ceilings, track lighting illuminating what appeared to be Stone's actual office. But it was the walls that stopped Reed cold. They were covered floor to ceiling with photographs, documents, maps connected by colored strings, like something from a conspiracy theorist's fever dream. Except this wasn't paranoia. This was methodology. Victoria Stone stood by the window, silhouetted against the Vienna skyline. She'd changed from her daytime suit into dark trousers and a cream silk blouse. A glass of red wine rested on the desk beside her. "Welcome to my real gallery," she said without turning. "The art downstairs is just set dressing. This is my actual work." Reed moved closer to the walls, scanning the information. He recognized names. Politicians, intelligence officials, corporate executives, photographs of meetings that were supposed to be secret, documents stamped with classification levels that made his throat tighten. Impressive collection, he managed. 15 years of careful curation. Stone finally turned to face him. Every piece tells a story, but the real art is understanding how the stories connect. How a banker's indiscretion in Prague relates to a weapons deal in Cairo. How a leaked memo from Washington impacts an election in Warsaw. You're not just selling secrets. You're mapping the whole system. Someone has to. Her voice carried an edge Reed hadn't heard before. Not anger exactly, but something colder. The people who run the world operate in darkness. They make decisions that affect millions of lives, and nobody holds them accountable. I simply illuminate. Reed pointed to a photograph of a man he didn't recognize. Who's this? Dr. Michael Peterson. Brilliant analyst, worked for American intelligence for 20 years. He discovered that his agency was manufacturing evidence to justify operations that violated international law. When he tried to report it through proper channels, they destroyed his career. Branded him paranoid, unstable. He came to me 6 months ago with documentation. Came to you. Past tense. Stone's expression didn't change, but Reed saw something flicker in her eyes. He was killed 2 weeks ago. Car accident in Brussels. Very convenient timing. The implications settled over Reed like cold water. You're saying his own agency. I'm saying men like Dr. Peterson are inconvenient, and inconvenient people have accidents. Stone moved to her desk, pulled out a file folder. This is what he gave me before he died. Evidence of 7 separate operations where your government, forgive me, where the American intelligence community falsified intelligence, assassinated rivals, and covered it up. All in the name of national security. Reed's mind raced. Chen had briefed him on Stone as a mercenary, a traitor who sold secrets for profit. But this woman standing before him seemed less like a criminal and more like a crusader. A dangerous distinction. Why are you showing me this? Because you're not really James Thorne, art collector. Stone set the file down between them. You're Marcus Reed, field operative, 12 years of service, exemplary record, sent here to kill me. The words hung in the air like smoke. Reed's hand moved instinctively toward his concealed weapon, but Stone made no threatening gesture. She simply watched him, calm and certain. How long have you known? Since the moment you walked into my gallery. You moved wrong, too aware, too controlled. Your cover story was plausible, but you looked at my security cameras instead of my art, and your eyes. She smiled faintly. Your eyes were measuring distances, calculating angle. I've seen that look before. Then why invite me here? Because I wanted you to see this. Stone gestured at the walls of evidence. Because whoever sent you, Director Chen, I presume, didn't tell you the whole truth. They told you I'm a threat. They didn't tell you why. Reed's grip tightened on the back of a chair. Everything Chen had said, everything he'd believed about this mission, was suddenly suspect. You could have forged all of this. I could have, but I didn't. Stone opened another file, pulled out photographs of Chen meeting with foreign operatives, documents bearing her signature authorizing off-book operations. Your director isn't hunting me because I'm dangerous to national security. She's hunting me because I'm dangerous to her. I know what she's done. I can prove it. Then why not release it? If you have all this evidence, why hide? Because information is only powerful if you survive long enough to use it. Stone's voice softened, revealing something raw beneath her composure. I'm not a patriot, Mr. Reed. I'm not some noble whistleblower. I'm a survivor. And survival means knowing when to hold your cards and when to play them. Reed studied her face, searching for deception, but finding only exhaustion beneath the elegant facade. What happened to you? What made you choose this life? Stone picked up her wine glass, took a slow sip. That's a longer story. But the short version is, I learned early that the world is run by predators. You can be prey or you can become something else, something they fear. Before Reed could respond, his phone vibrated. A text from an unknown number. Abort mission. Rival operative in Vienna. Extraction compromised. Stone saw his expression change. Problem? Someone else is here. Another operative. I know. Russian, probably GRU. He's been following you since this morning. Stone moved to the window, pointed down at the street. Silver Mercedes, 3 buildings down. He's waiting for you to leave so he can follow you back to your hotel. Except he doesn't plan to wait that long. Reed looked where she indicated and saw the car, the silhouette of a man behind the wheel. His mission had just become exponentially more complicated. Why tell me this? Because, Stone said quietly, you're about to make a choice, Mr. Reed. You can try to complete your mission, kill me, take your evidence back to Director Chen, and probably end up dead in an alley courtesy of our Russian friend. Or you can listen to what I'm really offering, which is the truth, all of it. About Chen, about the people she works for, about why they're so desperate to silence me. Stone met his eyes directly. And then you can decide whether you're willing to be their weapon or whether you want to be something more. The room felt impossibly small suddenly, the walls of evidence closing in. Reed had entered this building as a hunter. Now he wasn't sure what he was. I need time to think. You have until that Russian decides to stop waiting. Stone handed him a card with an address. Safe house. 2 streets over. Elena will meet you there in 1 hour if you decide you want to hear the rest. Reed took the card, his entire world tilting on its axis. Everything he'd believed, everything he'd trusted, was suddenly in question. As he moved toward the door, Stone spoke again. Mr. Reed? The 17 operatives I supposedly got killed. Ask yourself, who told you that story? And who benefited from their deaths? Reed descended the stairs into the Vienna night. The Russian's car still waiting in the shadows, his phone heavy with Director Chen's lies, and Victoria Stone's truth burning in his pocket like a lit fuse. Reed took the long route to the safe house, doubling back through narrow alleys, using shop windows as mirrors to check for the Russian. The silver Mercedes stayed 3 blocks back, patient and persistent, professional. At a busy intersection near the Naschmarkt, Reed disappeared into the crowded market, weaving through vendors closing their stalls. He emerged on the opposite side, hailed a taxi, and gave an address 2 streets away from Stone's location. The Mercedes was gone when he looked back, but that didn't mean he'd lost his tail. It meant the Russian was better than he'd thought. The safe house was a modest apartment above a closed bookshop. Elena opened the door before Reed could knock, her hand resting visibly on a pistol at her hip. Inside, quickly. The apartment was sparse, Functional furniture, thick curtains. The kind of place designed to be abandoned in minutes. Victoria Stone sat at a small table with a laptop and several file folders. She looked up as Reed entered, her composed mask slipping just enough to show relief. "You came. I want answers. Real ones." Reed remained standing, keeping distance between them. "Starting with who you really are." Stone closed the laptop slowly, as if deciding how much truth she could afford. "My real name doesn't matter anymore. The woman I was died a long time ago. But I'll tell you what made me into Victoria Stone." She stood, moved to the window, her silhouette framed against the dim Vienna streetlights. 20 years ago, I was a junior analyst for British intelligence. Brilliant career ahead of me, they said. I was idealistic, believed in the work. Then I uncovered something I wasn't supposed to find. Evidence that senior officials were selling classified information to private contractors, not for ideology, for money. "You reported it?" "I tried. Through proper channels, just like Dr. Peterson." Her voice hardened. "They thanked me for my diligence. Then they transferred me to a desk jobber analyzing tourist visa applications. When I pressed harder, they suggested I was unstable, experiencing stress. Perhaps I needed psychiatric evaluation." Reed had seen this pattern before, the institutional machinery grinding down anyone who threatened it. But hearing it from Stone made it real in a way briefing documents never had. "So, you ran." "I disappeared. But not before I copied everything I'd found. I realized then that the only protection was information. Enough of it, about enough powerful people, that killing me would be more dangerous than leaving me alive." She turned to face him. "That's what I've built, Mr. Reed. Not a business. An insurance policy. An insurance policy that's gotten people killed." "Has it?" Stone moved to the table, opened one of the folders. "Those 17 operatives Chen told you about? I have their files. Every single one was killed conducting operations that violated international law. Assassinations disguised as accidents. Torture programs. They weren't casualties of my information trading. They were casualties of their own agency's crimes." She spread photographs across the table. Men and women, faces frozen in official ID photos. Chen had them eliminated because they knew too much. She blamed me to justify hunting me down. The perfect cover story. Reed's phone buzzed. A text from Chen. "Status report. Immediate." He stared at the message, his finger hovering over the reply button. Everything in his training said to respond, to maintain protocol, to trust the chain of command. But his instincts, honed over 12 years in the field, were screaming that something was fundamentally wrong. "Don't answer," Stone said quietly. "The moment you do, she'll triangulate your location. The Russian isn't working alone, Mr. Reed. He's working with her." "That's not possible." "He's GRU. He's former GRU. Now he's a contractor. Chen hired him as backup in case you developed a conscience." Stone pulled out another document. Financial records showing wire transfers from an encrypted account Chen controlled. She couldn't trust you completely, so she brought in someone who would complete the mission without moral complications. Reed felt the world shift beneath him. "You're telling me my own director sent a Russian assassin as insurance against me? I'm telling you that you were never meant to survive this mission. You eliminate me, the Russian eliminates you, and Chen's problem disappears. No loose ends." The phone buzzed again. "Reed, respond now." Elena spoke from her position by the door. "Car approaching. Same Mercedes." Stone's composure finally cracked. "He's found us. We need to leave. Now. But Reed didn't move. He was staring at the files spread across the table, at the faces of dead operatives, at the evidence of Chen's corruption. 12 years of service, of following orders, of trusting that he was serving something larger than himself. And it had all been built on lies. Mr. Reed. Stone's hand was on his arm, urgent. We can debate morality later. Right now, we need to survive. Reed made his decision. He pulled out his weapon, checked the magazine, and looked at Stone directly. I'm not running anymore. And neither are you. It's time to end this. What are you suggesting? I'm suggesting we turn the tables. Chen wants you dead, and me disappeared. Let's give her exactly what she's afraid of. Both of us alive, together, with all your evidence. Stone studied him, and Reed saw the moment she recognized he'd crossed his point of no return. You realize what you're choosing? Your career, your life as you know it, was never real anyway. Reed moved to the window, assessed the street below. The Mercedes was parked 3 buildings down, engine running. How many exits does this building have? Elena answered. 2, front and rear courtyard. Then we split up. Elena, take Stone through the courtyard. Get to the gallery, secure the evidence. I'll handle our Russian friend. You can't take him alone, Stone protested. I'm not going to. Reed pulled out his phone, not to text Chen, but to call someone else, a former colleague who'd left the agency under suspicious circumstances. Someone who might believe him. I'm going to do what Dr. Peterson should have done. I'm going to make noise. As Elena led Stone toward the rear exit, Stone paused at the door. Why are you doing this? Reed thought of Chen's lies, of 17 dead operatives, of Dr. Peterson's convenient accident, of every compromise he'd made telling himself it served the greater good. Because I'm tired of being someone's weapon, he said. It's time to be something else. The Mercedes door opened. The Russian stepped out, his silhouette backlit by street lamps. And Reed, for the first time in his career, moved forward not following orders, but following his conscience. The Russian moved like a professional. No hesitation, no wasted motion. Reed watched from the apartment window as the man crossed the street, one hand inside his coat. Reed had perhaps 90 seconds before he reached the door. He made the call to his former colleague, a journalist who left the agency after too many buried stories. Listen carefully. Victoria Stone, Vienna. Everything Chen told us was a lie. I'm sending you files in 30 seconds. If you don't hear from me in an hour, publish everything. Reed, what are you... 30 seconds. Start downloading. Reed transmitted Stone's encrypted files to 3 separate locations, then pocketed his phone and moved to the door. He could hear footsteps on the stairs now, careful and measured. The Russian didn't knock. The lock clicked, professional pickwork, and the door swung inward. Reed was already moving, striking low and fast. The Russian twisted, absorbing the impact, and they crashed into the narrow hallway in controlled chaos. It lasted less than 30 seconds. Reed had the element of surprise. The Russian had decades of brutal training. They traded blows with surgical precision until Reed managed to pin the man's weapon hand against the wall. Chen sent you to clean up, Reed said, breathing hard. How much is she paying you to kill us both? The Russian's smile was cold. Enough. But you're already dead, Reed. You just don't know it yet. Check your phone. The Russian's expression flickered. Confusion, then calculation. Reed saw the moment he understood. You sent the files out. 3 locations. journalists, whistleblower organizations, your own GRU handlers, Chen's corruption, your contract, everything. If Stone or I die, it all goes public in 1 hour. The Russian's grip loosened fractionally. You're bluffing. Call Chen. Ask her what happens to her career if I'm right. They stood frozen, two professionals recognizing a stalemate when they saw one. Finally, the Russian released his weapon, raised his hand slowly. You've made powerful enemies, Reed. I've made honest ones. Reed stepped back, keeping the gun trained. Walk away. Tell Chen the job's off, or stay and guarantee both our agencies burn when those files drop. The Russian studied him for a long moment, then nodded once and disappeared down the stairs. Reed waited until he heard the street door close before allowing himself to breathe. His phone rang. Chen. What have you done? Her voice was ice over fury. My job. Found the truth. You should try it sometime. You've destroyed your career, your life. You'll be hunted by every intelligence service. Only if they're as corrupt as you. Reed moved toward the window, watching the Mercedes drive away. I've got 15 years of evidence against you, Director. Dr. Peterson's files, the dead operatives, your off-book operations, all ready to publish. A long silence. What do you want? Immunity for Stone, full exoneration, and you resign quietly before I make this public. That's impossible. Then we'll see what the Congressional Oversight Committee thinks about your unauthorized assassinations. Reed's voice hardened. You sent me to kill an innocent woman to protect your crimes. You hired a foreign operative to eliminate me. I'm giving you one chance to end this cleanly. Reed. He ended the call and headed for the gallery.